Welcome back to Learn Astrology with Mary. My name's Mary English. You can find me at www.maryenglish.com, maryenglish.co.uk. And UK Astrology says taking a sharp intake of breath. It's still hot here in the UK. I mean, it's not a crazy temperature this morning. And luckily, for the first time in just over a month, it actually rained this morning. And being English and living in the United Kingdom of England, Scotland, Ireland and Wales, I really enjoyed the fact that it had rained because the garden is dry as a bone and I'm trying to grow tomatoes this year, which take a lot of water. So I was happy about the rain, and I would be anyway because British people like rain. So it's still hot. There will still be, unfortunately, the buzzing of the fan in the background, which you will have to ignore, but I know you can. Now we've got some good news today. A lovely person entered the competition and won second prize, because from episode 500 we were working on reverse engineering a natal chart for someone to find out their date of birth, their time of birth and their location. And I gave him second prize because he'd got everything correct except the exact location. So I just thought, I did say on that podcast you need to find the location. So they were something like 80 miles, I think it was, 80 miles away from where the actual location was. So if you haven't entered and you'd like the first prize, then please ping me over an email, mary@maryenglish.co.uk, and the chart is up on the show notes for episode 500. You've got to reverse engineer it, find the date, time and location of the person, and ping, you win number one. So of the now 200 and something people that have downloaded and listened to that episode, I'm sure there must be one other person that could probably get it correct. And if you've done it before and you've had a prize, do it again. I don't mind. Now, the other thing I need to tell you before I get into today's episode, which is about the joys, we'll talk about joy in a minute. I've changed my booking app. The booking app that I was using suddenly increased in price by 25%. I don't have an extra 25% to pay for that. And also it would mean that I would then have to raise my prices by 25% to cover the costs, which I'm not prepared to do. So I have changed to a different booking app. So if you've been on my website for the last 4 days, 3 days, 4 days, there has been a note up there saying, please email me if you want a reading. I've fixed it all now. I am using a new piece of software so that you can book directly. Choose the appointment you want, choose the date and time that you'd like it. Make sure when you're doing that you choose the time zone for where you live. So if you're living in the US or another country other than UK, it should detect where you live, or at least where you're surfing from, which might not be correct, but choose your time zone. It will automatically convert it for me. You don't have to do anything, just choose your time zone. If you're in the UK, just leave it set as it is. Don't mess about with that bit of it. With the previous booking app, it was a little bit more user-friendly, so this might be a little bit more difficult. I hope it isn't. But yeah, when you book, just let me know what happens. But if you've got a discount code for a booking from a previous podcast or whatever, you're going to have to email me to get the new code, because you can't use old codes on a new bit of software. It ain't gonna work. So do send me an email. Also, if you have been trying to book and whatever you were using before doesn't work, that is because of that. I've now changed my booking. Okay, so that's the two important things out of the way. Now today, I've covered this book a lot, and I have tried to get Antony Louis on the podcast. I couldn't last time I asked him for personal reasons, busy. But he wrote a lovely book, Horary Astrology Plain and Simple, Fast and Accurate Answers to Real World Questions. I probably would like myself to be able to do a bit more horary astrology, because I do quite like it. I think it's a clever, is that the right word? A clever way of answering a question that someone has raised rather than just doing a yes or no answer. Because I could do yes or no's because I've got a crystal and I can dowse and do a yes or no. However, astrology, because it was invented a long time ago, went through various different permutations, etc. Horary astrology was when you went to see someone as an astrologer. There always was, am I going to be king? Will I inherit? Will I get married? Those sort of questions. I mean, I don't know that I've had too many clients ever ask me if they want to be king. I haven't read for Prince Charles, who's now King Charles. But those were the sorts of things that people back in the day would have wanted to know. That they've still got questions. And in the book, what prompted Antony to even get into horary astrology in the way that he did was he had a friend who was pregnant and lost the baby, and I think she was going for some tests or something. I can't remember the full story now. I'd have to go back to chapter 1. She basically lost the baby, but she'd asked the question, I think she'd asked something like, would I have a live birth? And Antony did the chart, and not only did it correctly answer the question for her, which unfortunately was the baby wasn't going to live, but blah, 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 all these other things turned out from the chart that he'd made. Now, the trick to horary astrology is not to just ask a generic question like, will I marry? Because it might come back with a yes, and you could be 92 when you get married and you're now 24 and you don't want to wait until you're 92. So be careful about asking a generic question. It's better, much, much better to use horary astrology to be specific. Now, what we're going to be talking about today is chapter 10, and he has a thing, because he's written about it, not that he's invented it, a thing called the joys of the planets. So I'm just going to read it out to you, and then we're going to do a chart example, and we're going to ask you whether or not you got this in your chart, etc. The joys of the planets are yet another set of planetary assignments to houses and signs that was assimilated into Western astrology. One tradition appointed the same planet to govern both a mundane house and its corresponding sign of the zodiac. Another tradition assigned each of the 7 classical planets to the mundane houses where it especially rejoiced. In addition, the classical planets rejoice in certain signs. According to Lilly, he was like this famous astrologer, Aquarius is the joy of Saturn, Sagittarius of Jupiter, Scorpio of Mars, Libra of Venus, Virgo of Mercury. Okay, now those things I definitely know and use. That if Saturn is in the sign of Aquarius, it's well and truly happy. I personally also think it's happy when it's in Capricorn, because Sagittarius is ruled by the planet Jupiter. If you've got your Jupiter in the sign of Saggy, wahey, your Jupiter's happy. If you've got your Mars in Scorpio, yo-ho, your Mars is happy. If you've got your Libra in Venus, la-la, even happier. And then if your Virgo's in Mercury, rejoicing also, as far as I'm concerned, if it's in the sign of Gemini, and also if your Libra is in Taurus. Sorry, Libra. Your Venus is in Taurus. Ugh. And he's quoted page 176. Now, he's got, below is a list of planetary joys derived from the 4th century text of Firmicus Maternus and the work of William Lilly. Now, this is something slightly different. And when they say joy, it means that they're happy. The planets are happy in those locations. So I'm going to read them out to you. House of joy, planet, sign of its joy. So the first house, if you've got Mercury there, my dad had that. And so Mercury's happy in the first house, and even more, I don't know if it applies to house. No, it's just signs. Sign of its joy is Mercury. Third house, planet, moon, sign of its joy, Cancer. Well, yeah, I can understand that because moon's happy in Cancer. 5th house, Venus, and the sign of its joy, Libra, so that's correct. 6th house, I'm not saying any of this is incorrect. 6th house, Mars, and the sign it's happy in is Scorpio. 9th house, the Sun, sign of its joy, Leo. 11th house, Jupiter, sign of its joy, Saggy. 12th house, Saturn, in the sign of Aquarius. Now, he's going to explain the next bit, which I'm going to read to you. So it's about planets that are happier in a certain sign. but are ecstatic when they're in those specific houses. Now, in my modern head, I would say that Mercury is happy in the third house. That's how astrology sort of evolved to the era that I learned it. So Mercury in the third, because the third is all about communication. The third is similar to the sign of Gemini. Mercury in the third, I would say, is happy in that house, not according to the ancients, because this is why. He says, Mercury is the natural ruler of communication and concretely of the tongue. The first house governs the physical body and specifically the head because of its association with Aries and Mars. Mercury rejoices in the first house because the tongue's in your head, enjoys being in the head. If you know anyone with first house Mercury, check to see how they love to talk. Now, I have talked about my dad's chart in a previous podcast. On episode 130, I was demonstrating what somebody sounded like when they had Mercury slap bang on the ascendant in the sign of Sagittarius, because my dad was multilingual, and he just loved chatting. And he listened, don't get me wrong, he wasn't somebody who just went, rah, rah, rah. He really liked a good conversation, and he was a good conversationalist. Is that the right word? So if you want to listen, go to episode 130. You don't listen to the whole thing, but his voice comes on around about 16 minutes into episode 130. So that's what he's talking about here. If you know someone with first house Mercury, check to see how they love to talk, okay? The tongue is in the head, love to talk. So I didn't discover this until way after my beginnings in astrology, but I wanted to share it with you today because I think it's nice to know these extra things. Now, the moon governs the trivial happenings of everyday life. The third house also rules taken for granted daily trotting and trudging. The moon joys in the third because it shares with the third house dominion over local travel and humdrum happenstance. It's written that. Please, Antony, could you have written that in English? Because that's a bit difficult to get your head around. So the moon joys in the third because it shares with the third house dominion over local travel and humdrum happenstance. So do you have any of these things? Do you have Mercury in the first or near the ascendant? Do you have moon in the third? And is your moon, it doesn't matter what sign it's in, is your moon happy in the third? I think my husband, I'm 99% sure, yes, he's got moon in the third. He's got Saturn in the third as well, but he's definitely got moon in the third. Yes, moon in the third. And he's quite happy doing sort of short journeys. So he's not mad on long distance travel, even though his moon is in Sagittarius. He has done long distance travel in the past, but he's not one for wanting to do it now. His favourite thing is to take a little trip out in the car, not go too far, go for a walk, listen to some birds, hear the birds tweeting wherever it is, go to a coffee shop and have tea, and then drive home and be home in time for lunch. That's his thing. He loves that. I quite like that too, because I've got moon in Gemini, but he's got his moon in the third. He's also much more emotional, because the moon is where your emotions are, about his family, because the third house is the house of siblings. I've got my Neptune there, so I had a psychic connection with one of my sisters. So if you've got moon in the third, moon's well and truly happy there, according to your man Firmicus Maternus and your man William Lilly. Moving on. Moderns like to think of Venus as a goddess of pure love. To the ancient Greeks and Romans, she was rather a floozy, given to self-indulgence and the pleasures of the flesh. Because of her party-going and artistic nature, Venus rejoices in the 5th house of fun, enjoyment, sensuality, and creativity. Now, I don't know off the top of my head anybody personally who's got Venus in the 5th. I can't remember every planet in every house of everybody I've ever met. I know most of my family, but not every planet for them. And I'd always know where the sun and the moon and the ascendant are, but the other things I can't remember, so I can't just like chuck at you Venus in the 5th house. Have got a chart example that's got that in there. So moving on. Mars, the lesser malefic, likes to make people suffer. He does this partly through sickness, fevers, inflammations, cuts, injuries, accidents, and epidemics. Because he enjoys inflicting bodily suffering, Mars grows ecstatic in the 6th house of illness, upset, and distress. Mars also symbolises the human energy needed to do the laborious drudgery of the 6th house. Now, I've got Venus and Mars conjunct in the sign of Aquarius in my 6th house, so I didn't really think of my Mars as being happy or sad there as it goes. But according to these experts, that it likes to make me... I don't have inflammations, fevers and whatevers. I have got a medical condition which I've talked about before. I'm not talking about it again, but it's ecstatic in the 6th house of illness, upset and distress. So Mars is happier there. But I mean, Mars is the house of where you work, and I do like working. I am never going to stop working. I cannot imagine not working. I get a little bit stressed out if I'm on holiday for too long. I sort of die of boredom, like I want to get back to work and start reading for clients again. Eek. But I absolutely love my job, and as part of my retirement plan is, as long as I've got all my abilities, I'm going to carry on flipping working, and not because I need to, but because I love to. That might be because my Venus is there, but yeah, Mars. Maternus called the 9th house the house of the sun god. Now, I do know numbers of people with this. The sun does well here because the 9th house, like the sun, has the nature of fire. The 9th is also in trine aspect with the other 2 fire houses, the 1st where the sun is exalted and the 5th which the sun rules. Now, my mother and my brother, because I did my whole family in episode, I don't know, 90 something, my mother and my brother had sun in the 9th. My mother converted to Catholicism when she was 16 or so, and my brother was anti-religion. Both of them liked long-distance travel. Both of them liked further education of some sort, spirituality, the whole shebang. My brother, as I say, wasn't into religion, but his religion, inverted commas, was books. So I personally know, people with sun in the 9th house. The sun is well and truly happy there. It doesn't stress out. These people wasn't related to them. It'll just operate in a big way, because Jupiter's like a big thing in the 5th house. The 9th house is a bit Jupiterian. Now, he says, some authors also feel the sun rejoices in the 10th house, or at least is especially fortunate there. Here, Maternus locates life and vital spirit, both naturally signified by the sun. Sol governs kings, president. Sol's the posh word for sun. Kings, presidents, honour, preferment, promotion and success. All 10th house matters. As king of the universe, it's only fair that the sun should rejoice in 2 houses, the 9th and the 10th. Jupiter also does well in the 10th. The ancients, including Ptolemy, is that how you pronounce it, called the 11th house the house of the good daemon, and regarded it as especially fortunate. It was only natural to assign Jupiter the greater benefic to this house because Jupiter signifies prosperity, expansion and good luck. Did he say that? Yeah, 11th house Jupiter. Finally, the ancients regarded the 12th as the house of the evil daemon. The 12th and the 6th houses were the 2 most unfortunate places around the wheel. Thanks, Antony. Which planet most loves misery? Saturn, of course. Saturn delights in the suffering, self-undoing, sacrifice, suicide, assassination, secret enemies, karma, widowhood, grief, sorrow, hospitalization, limitations and confinements of the 12th. He couldn't be happier anywhere else in the chart. Yes, I do know people with, I know quite a lot of people with Saturn in the 12th, and in fact I've talked about that in the previous podcast. It can indicate that your father isn't around when you're growing up, because Saturn's the planet of parenthood, and locating in the 12th means that your father might not be visible that much while you're little. I'd heard that one way before I gave birth to somebody that did, but it's happy there. Okay, so if you've got Saturn in your 12th, it's happy there because it likes all the misery type of things. So it'll do, inverted commas, better in there. Obviously, it depends what sign of the zodiac it's in, because those things modify stuff. Yeah. So today we've covered the joys of the planet. So we already know what signs things are in, they're happier. But these are now houses that the ancient astrologers said that the planets are even happier. Yeah. So first house Mercury, third house Moon, fifth house Venus, sixth house Mars, ninth house Sun, 11th house Jupiter, 12th house Saturn. Now in our chart example, we're using Gordon Ramsay, because there's absolutely no astrological way that I could have got a chart that had got all of that in it. The planets don't move that way for that to happen. And there's me gaily asking the search tool on astro.com, find me a chart with all of these planets in all of these houses. It can do it. So we've got Gordon Ramsay. If you live in the UK, in fact you might have heard about me if you live in another country, he's a very famous British chef. I don't know where he was born. Oh, Scotland, beg your pardon, there we go. He's born in Scotland, so he's Scottish. Okay, apologise, according to English, he's Scottish. And he's got Moon in the 3rd in the sign of Virgo. If you've ever watched any of his videos, he gets so emotional about the smallest of things, because Virgo's the sign of minitude. His Uranus is conjunct his Moon and his Pluto and his Mars, so he's got a little stellium in the 3rd, but we're talking about the Moon and it being happy in the 3rd house. It's joyful there, according to our Antony. And the actual, let me just get back to the actual quote with the humdrum thing. Now, this section on joys of the planets, the Moon is happy because he says here, the trivial happenings of everyday life. So that's what the Moon governs. And the 3rd house also rules taken for granted daily trottings and trudgings. The Moon joys in the 3rd because it shares with the 3rd house dominion over local travel and humdrum happenstance. Happenstance, bless. But I don't think being a chef is humdrum, but there definitely are things that need to be done to be a chef. And he's got 2 of these things we're talking about today. So not only has he got his Moon in the, aren't I clever for finding that? He's got Moon in the 3rd and he's got Venus in the 5th. His Venus is in Scorpio. Don't ever let me down. But it is in the 5th. And so if you're a chef, you know, because he says the 5th, or let me go back to this, that was Moon, and then we go to Venus, goddess of love, floozy, self-indulgent, pleasure the first. Because of her party-going artistic nature, Venus rejoices in the 5th house of fun, enjoyment, sensuality and creativity. He is a very, very creative chef. He did a whole series of TV programs where he goes into a restaurant and then picks them all to bits and gets them to give him the best dish and then tells them it's SHIT. Obviously, it's all for the cameras. However, you can tell he's very, very, oh no, what's the word I want to use? He just loves his job. Okay, he loves making food for people, making nice food, making nice, edible, attractive food for people, not just plonking stuff on places. When he goes into restaurants and they just plonk it on a plate, he absolutely goes crazy doo-dee-da with that. He has a very interesting chart. He's got lots of stellium in the 3rd, stellium in the 5th. He has got Mercury retrograde in the 6th. I don't know if Mercury's happy there. Nobody's told me anything about that. And he's got Saturn retrograde conjunct Chiron in the 9th. So I wouldn't have thought that's particularly happy there. And his MC's 11 degrees Aquarius and his ascendant is Gemini. He is good at what he does. And I wonder sometimes whether or not, if people didn't end up on television, if they'd be as successful. I think the minute you hit television and you get successful. What's very interesting in his chart, he's got absolutely nothing in a cardinal sign. Okay, no, nothing, 0, because he has 4 planets in Virgo, 3 planets in Scorpio, 1 in Saggy, 1 planet in Pisces, conjunct Chiron, which is also in Pisces. So he's got predominantly mutable in his chart, and fixed is the Sun, Venus, Neptune and Jupiter. That's planetary wise. I'm not covering north nodes and stuff. And he's got a mutable ascendant. So even though he's a very, very fixed sign of the zodiac, there is a lot of mutability going on. So he does try lots of different things. He doesn't do the same meal all the time. Some chefs do. I just think, gosh, don't you die of boredom making the same thing all the time? Even I don't do that. Well, I do quite a lot of meals, similar. But yeah, you've got to jazz things up occasionally. It depends what you classify food as being. I mean, Venus in the 5th, and he rejoices of fun, enjoyment, sensuality and creativity. Yes, sometimes food is just like what you need to eat to keep you alive. That's how some people have the attitude towards it. And then others, that some people love cooking, other people hate it. They just want to eat the food. Some people don't. Do you know, I even know people that don't like eating. I know personally people that don't like eating. I also know people that I've read for that aren't into food at all. The food is just got above it, so I'll do it. I just think, ooh, don't you even like chocolate? So our chart example is Gordon Ramsay. We've got these planets happier or ecstatic, because he's using the word joy, in particular houses. Ping me over an email, mary@marylinch.co.uk, if you've got one of them. Okay, let me know how it is for you. You know, put a little bit in the email. Don't just tell me I've got this here. You know, tell me a little bit about what it's like for you. How have you experienced it? Yeah, and do you feel that your planet in that house feels joyful? Now, obviously, I need to put the codicil that I do use the equal house system. You could be creating your charts anywhere on the internet, and you could be using Placidus, whole sign, whatever. I only use equal house, and I perfectly understand that what I've just talked about those planets might turn up in different houses if you use different systems. That's a whole different thing altogether. And in this particular book, Antony Louis doesn't use equal house. Okay, just want to assure you of that. Now, I've been talking about this being natal astrology. If you're using it for horary astrology, and then the chart that you've created, and you get a chart, and then Mercury's in the 1st house, then whatever it is that you're making the determination about, then that's going to have to be a lot of conversation associated with it. So you need to sort of twist your head a bit when you're doing horary astrology. I really wish I knew more horary astrology. I'm going to have to get somebody on the podcast that talks about it. Anyway, going forwards, the recording of How to Survive a Pisces, I'll put the link in the show notes, is now available. You can now Google How to Survive a Pisces audiobook, and it will come. And I'm very happy that it's out there. It's gone out into the big wide world. I am working my way through the series, so hopefully in X amount of months' time I will have done every sign of the zodiac, so you can listen to yours. And just advance notice, we've got Tina next weekend. I'm interviewing her. She is the co-owner of the AstroCal Moon Diary that I'm always waffling on about. And we're also going to talk about the fact that she's now started producing a pocket ephemeris starting for the year 2027, which you might not think is that important. I think it's something to be cherished. Listen to this. That's the actual thing itself, and it lists the motion of the planets, the log tables, the aspectarians for the year, the table of houses for Liverpool, London, New York, positions of Chiron, Ceres, Pallas, phases of the moon, latitude, longitude, opens, flat, for easy reference, calculated in the UTC at noon, monthly lunar aspects, everything you need all in one place. So rather than needing to rely on apps and websites, you can, if you're doing something and you're sat in your living room and go, oh, where's the moon in whatever date it is for next year, you'll see that, and heaps of other stuff as well. So we will be talking about that too. So if you've got any queries on astrology, you've got what I've talked about today in your own chart, ping me over an email, let me know. If you've got something else you want me to talk about on the podcast, by all means. This is not just by me. It's my voice that you're hearing, but it is for your benefit, for people like you that are either interested in astrology or practicing astrology, or even more wanting one day to practice astrology. I've got more than 25 years experience, probably something like 30 years experience in it now, and I really love sharing with you stuff that I do and that I've learned, and what does or doesn't work for me but might for you, etc. So enough waffle. I hope you have a fab week, and I'll be back next week. Bye bye now.